welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. And yes, it is Spooks because it is October 1st, which means it is finally time to kick off the Halloween season. Basically, for every weekday for the entire month of October, I upload a new Halloween themed makeup tutorial, and every other Saturday of the month I upload a Spoopy Saturday, which is still a Halloween themed video. However, it is not makeup related, so that way we get a little break from all the makeup tutorials every now and then. Anyways, for today's makeup look, I thought it'd be really fun to do Ruth from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Now, unfortunately, I actually never read the books growing up, which I am shocked. I remembered the artwork, but it just was like one of those things that's like hidden in the back of your mind, and all of a sudden the movie came out and they were referencing the book and I was just like, whoa. Unfortunately, I have not been able to see the new Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark because Halloween season hit hard and fast, but I am hoping to see it in the near future. It looks absolutely amazing. I love the makeup design for it and how closely they followed the illustrations in the book. It is just immaculate and exciting, and so Ruth was definitely a character that was actually recommended to me by one of you guys to do this Halloween, so I thought, why not? This is actually a 5-part makeup tutorial, which is crazy. I don't think I've ever done a makeup tutorial with that many different parts in it. So honestly, there are 5 different parts that you could choose from if you do want to go as Ruth for Halloween. We have regular Ruth, we have Ruth with a tiny pimple, we have Ruth with a big pimple, we have Ruth with a big pimple and a spider leg coming out of it, and we have Ruth that is like exploding with spiders, kind of like Oogie Boogie with like worms and bugs and all that good stuff. So anyways, without further ado, if you guys are interested in seeing how you can achieve this Ruth makeup tutorial for Halloween, then just keep watching. So to get started, I'm going to be making the giant pimple that is on Ruth's face just so that it can set and dry for later use. So I'm going to start by applying Vaseline all over the life cast and then begin applying my character clay onto the life cast and beginning to smooth out the edges and build up the shape that I'm wanting. Now, I did look at a lot of reference photos online to try to mimic it as best as possible, and I always highly recommend doing this if you are trying to recreate a character and you want it to look as similar as possible. Now, another thing you can do is I'm obviously using clay to build this up. You can, of course, use latex and cotton to build this up on your own face if you don't have a life cast. There are plenty of alternatives in order to make this prosthetic happen. This is just the one that I wanted to do because I knew I wanted it to look like skin, and I really wanted as thin of edges as possible so that it really blended into my own skin. Next, I'm going to be taking my liquid latex and building up the prosthetic piece with a sponge. So something I recommend doing is I'm going to be applying the liquid latex, stippling it all over the prosthetic, including the edges as well, allowing it to dry before beginning on the next layer. I did about 8 layers for this. However, whenever I was on the 5th layer, I stopped focusing on the edges and primarily applied it to the clay prosthetic. That way we could have thin edges to help blend into our skin so that it looks nice and seamless. Once you have allowed that to dry, I'm going to be taking my Johnson's baby powder and applying this all over the prosthetic, slowly lifting up one edge and applying baby powder underneath as I continue to remove the prosthetic, making sure to powder the other side as I do so. We're then going to be filling the prosthetic because it will concave if you just try to glue it on your face. It won't really work. Plus, pimples are filled, so we're just gonna fill it with pimple juice, aka definitely not spiders, by taking some liquid latex, applying it on to the prosthetic, and then taking a cotton ball, applying that in the middle of the prosthetic and blending that out using more liquid latex so that it is nice and smooth and will lay flat on your face. Next, we're going to be moving on to the beauty portion of this Ruth makeup tutorial by setting up her base. So I'm going to be taking my Buckle Bunny Beauty Fringe Benefit Primer and applying this all over my face before taking my Born This Way foundation and my NYX Total Control foundation and applying this all over my face, making sure to blend it out by using my IT Cosmetics Airbrush Blurring Foundation Brush. Following that, I'm going to be taking my Buckle Bunny Beauty Cream to Powder Foundation in Mocha and using this as a contour and to help bronze up my face. So I'm applying it to the areas that I want to deepen in bronze and then just blending that out, making sure to avoid having any harsh lines. I'm then going to be taking my ColourPop No Filter Concealer and using this to highlight my face. I'm going to be applying it under my eyes, my forehead, under my cheekbones, my nose, and then after I've done my eyebrows and let this sit for a little bit, I'm then going to be blending that out. Taking my Airspun translucent powder, I'm going to be setting this to make sure that it doesn't move, and then I'm going to be moving on to my eyes. I'm going to start off by priming my eyes with my Smashbox 24-Hour Photo Finish Primer to help make sure that this eyeshadow is not going to move. Before we move on to the shadow, I'm going to be taking my ColourPop Disney Designer Collection It's a Princess Thing palette, taking Chip and applying this all over my eyelids. I'm then going to be taking a blending brush and blending this out to make sure that I don't have any harsh lines, and I recommend doing this throughout the eyeshadow portion before going into Prince Charming, and I'm just going to be applying this to my brow bone. Next, I will be going into my Jaclyn Hill Morphe eyeshadow palette. I'm going to be taking this deep plum color, and then using a pencil brush, I'm going to lightly be applying it to the corners of my eyes, but making sure to blend that out because we don't want this to be too much of a smoky eye. Just according to the reference photos, she definitely does seem to have a plum shadow going on in a V shape at the corner of the eye, so I'm even going to be lightening this up with some more chip as well. I will then be taking my L'Oreal So Kiss Me eyeliner in charcoal and just go ahead and tightline the upper lash line. Next, I'm going to be taking my Too Faced Cocoa Contour Palette, taking medium and dark cocoa and beginning to contour my face. I'm going to be chiseling out those cheekbones and applying this to all the areas that we added our cream contour. We then want to go ahead and bronze up our face by taking our Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer and applying this over the areas that we contoured before going into our Physicians Formula Butter Blush in Plum Rose and applying this to the areas as well, just to help add a little bit more color to those areas. We're then going to be jumping up to our Ray eyeshadow and applying this to the inner corner of our eye and then also bringing that onto the lid as well, just to help lighten that up a bit. I will then be taking my Buckle Bunny Beauty Honey Bunny blush and applying this to my cheekbones, and since she is performing in a play, I did go a little heavier than normal with this. I'm then going to be going into my BH Cosmetics highlighting palette, taking Ethereal and Vivid, mixing them together and highlighting my cheekbones and even bringing that down the bridge of my nose and my Cupid's bow as well. Following that, we're moving on to lips. I'm going to be taking my MAC lip liner in Dervish and just going ahead and outlining my lips before going into my ColourPop Disney Collection lipstick in Jasmine and applying this all over my lips. Now, I was quite determined to get this lip color perfect, so I even added a little bit of my ColourPop Lippy Sticks in Julep all over the lips, and even went into my Disney Designer lip gloss in Boo and applied that onto my lips as well. We will then be prepping our eyelashes by curling them, and then I'm going to be going into my Tarteist Lash Paint Mascara and just sweeping this through my eyelashes to prep them for false eyelashes later on. I'm then going to be applying some Kiss No. 11s, and Ruth does not seem to be wearing any false eyelashes in the film, so this was just something that I wanted to add for myself. That is the end of the beauty portion of this tutorial. If you want, we are now going to move on to some fun, gory shenanigans. We're going to start off by creating her mini pimple. I'm going to be greasing up a plate with my Vaseline, and then I'm going to be taking a drop, literally a drop of liquid latex and dropping that onto said plate, waiting for it to completely dry, and then we are going to powder that with some baby powder. Once it is finished, you can just literally flick it off gently by using your finger. You're going to be taking some liquid latex on a Q-tip, and you're just going to be applying that to the area that you want to have your pimple, placing your pimple on top of that. Looks super cute. And then just go ahead and apply anything else as needed. I decided to add a tiny bit of a cotton ball just to give it more of a popping point before blending out the edges with some more liquid latex as well. Once that is dried, I'm going to be taking my Airspun Translucent powder, setting that before going in to my foundations from earlier, and I'm just going to go ahead and recolor those to look like a skin tone color, and then I'm going to be going into my Moon Creations Body Paint Crayon and just applying this to the tip of the pimple. I'm then going to be going into my Skin Illustrator Flesh palette. This is an alcohol activated paint, and I'm going to be using some Rose Adjuster just to help redden up the surrounding area while still allowing it to look natural. I will then be taking my Marilyn Paradise paint in white and just applying this to the very tip of the pimple before mixing some of my white and my yellow Marilyn Paradise paint together to create a pussy kind of color and just apply that over top and blend that out with my finger. And we have Ruth Part 2 with just a little bit of added stress. Now it's time to pick off that pimple and bring out the big boy. I'm then going to be applying that with my Ben Nye Spirit Gum. I'm going to be applying it to the back of the prosthetic before taking some paper towel just to help tacky that up so it will help stick to my face a little bit better. I'm then going to be mixing some of my Pros-Aid and Kazzue together, and this is going to create Bondo. This is used to help blend the edges of a prosthetic if you feel like they're too jagged or they're too thick. So this is definitely something I really recommend. You're kind of just going to be creating a bridge from your skin to the prosthetic piece. I'm then going to be taking my Airspun translucent powder, making sure to set that before going back to my foundations from earlier and just applying this once again all over the prosthetic edges and just helping blend this into our face. And then I'm going to be going into my Skin Illustrator Flesh Palette, taking this entire top row, mixing them together as needed to really help blend that into my natural skin tone. I'm then going to be taking quite a bit of Rose Adjuster and just really building this up onto my face because this is a huge pimple, so there's going to be quite a lot of redness. I'm then going to be going back into that Moon Creations crayon and just once again applying that to the tip of the pimple, blending it out with my finger, going into my white and yellow Maryland Paradise paint, making that nice pussy color, applying that to the tip as well, before taking some of the white Paradise paint and really focusing on creating more of a point. Now I really want this to look like flesh, and whenever you have a pimple, it kind of starts to get shiny, so I'm just going to solve this by taking some KY jelly on a finger and applying this onto the prosthetic piece. And you are finished with this step. Honestly, this is how I personally always imagine Ruth, so this is how I personally would recommend wearing her if you're going out to a Halloween party or an event. Now this next part is stupidly easy. I took a piece off of the feather and applied that onto the pimple using some spear gum to make it look like the spider leg is coming out of your face. You can just paint this on with black body paint. It is whatever you prefer, but I wanted mine to be three-dimensional. And that is spider leg coming out of pimple Ruth. And we are finally moving on to the last version of Ruth, which is the one where the spiders are crawling out of her face. I'm going to start off by taking some liquid latex and applying a little bit onto my face before applying a cotton ball over top, blending that out with some more liquid latex before separating that piece with a spatula just to help make it look like a giant gash on my face where the spiders can crawl out of. I'm then going to be setting that with some Airspun translucent powder, and then going into the foundations from earlier, I'm going to be applying that on to the edges of the prosthetic before taking my Skin Illustrator Flesh Palette, taking the entire top row once again, just to really help color that prosthetic piece to blend into my skin. I'm then going to be taking some Rose Adjuster and applying that all over the cheek area once again just to kind of help add some irritation and redness. And then I'm going to be going into my Graftobian Pro Paint in Fuzzy Bear Brown and just applying that into the gash before going into my Maryland Paradise Paint in Black and applying that to the center of the gash to really help make it look like a deeper part has opened up. I will then be taking my Graftobian Pro Paint in Fuzzy Bear Brown once again, and I'm going to be using this to create these spiders. Honestly, it is very intimidating thinking about creating spiders. However, once you start doing it, it is actually pretty easy. You're just going to be creating 2 tiny balls and then making 8 legs coming off of them. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. Just make sure that you're using a thin enough brush so that way you can get some thin legs and really help make it look realistic. I also recommend trying to taper the legs out at the ends and make them thinner, just so that it gets from thick to thin and kind of looks more like a realistic spider leg. Now this is where the fun comes in. We're going to be adding dimension to these spiders, so I'm going to be taking my Maryland Paradise Paint in Black and just applying this to tiny areas on the spider, not the whole thing. This is really going to help create some shadows. And speaking of shadows, I'm going to be going into my Jaclyn Hill Morphe eyeshadow palette, taking these 2 eyeshadows and applying this around the spider areas just to make it look like they're actually on top of our skin. I'm then going to be going into my Maryland Paradise Paint in White, and just like we added shadows to the spiders, we're going to be adding some highlights to their bodies as well. Once again, use a tiny amount, don't apply it all over their entire body. Now I'm going to be going into my vampire blood that you can get from Walmart for super cheap, and just applying this into the cut. We don't want this to be super bleeding, but obviously this is inside of your body, so there's going to be blood in there for sure. Another thing I decided I wanted to do is I'm going to be going into my Skin Illustrator palette, taking the vein tone, and I'm actually going to be creating some veins around her face where obviously some things are going wrong from having spiders literally infesting her body. I'm even going to go into lividity as well and just doing the same thing, bringing it down onto my chest as well. And last but not least, we're going to be going back into the plum eyeshadow and really just building that up onto the eyelid to make it look darker, because now we have a black eye, so we want to kind of complement that with some dark eyeshadows as well. And that is the completed version of Ruth's final form and the creative liberties I took to make it look like the darkness was consuming her as the spiders were coming out of her. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my videos. I am going to be uploading a new Halloween themed makeup tutorial every weekday for the entire month of October, so you definitely don't want to miss that. So anyways, once again, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!